I'm coming into Graniteville from Highway 421 in Warrenville, headed north on Main Street. Once you cross over these railroad tracks, you are in Graniteville. I wanted to start at Highway 421 so you could get a sense of how far down the chlorine cloud came. This is the U.S. Highway 1 overpass that was mentioned in the book. This is where the hazmat teams first came into Canal Street. The blue building on the left is Bush's Seafood. This was where the hazmat team first encountered the chlorine gas as they came into Graniteville via Main Street. We're now approaching Hester Lane on the left and Seastrunk Street on the right, just before what was Dale's convenience store. Station 1 of the Graniteville-Vaucluse-Warrenville Fire Department is immediately on the right, out of screen. They had a new building constructed after the wreck because their old building was so corroded. On the left is Hickman Street. It goes down behind where the train wreck was and crosses into Aiken Street. Directly ahead of us, the White House and the little cream-colored house on the right, that is Rocktown. And it's actually a horseshoe loop. That's the left entrance, and then it circles back around towards the right and comes out on Railroad Avenue. I'm going to pause here for a moment to talk about Ground Zero. And on the left, on this stretch of train track, is Ground Zero. The siding went off kind of towards that little white church up there on the left. Okay, I am at literal ground zero for the Graniteville train wreck. You can still see where cross ties are all torn up. And there's the infamous siding right there. Now for perspective, I want you to see how close everything is. There's that little church. There's the official train wreck monument, and then here is Rocktown. That was the first residential neighborhood that was affected by the train wreck. Down here is the brand new fire station, but it's basically in the spot where the old one was. We're just going to walk along all these old cross ties here. See? That's where the track was cut loose from the main line. Right down there is historic Graniteville. That's where the shopping center is. Over in the distance back here is the Stevens steam plant over that way. I believe there was a fatality in the Stevens steam plant. And these were Graniteville Company administrative offices here. I'm just going to keep walking. just so you can have a perspective here. I believe most of the train cars that derailed were either over in that little field or right along through here. The majority of the fatalities was just down the hill there in the Woodhead division. And that building would not hold paint for 5 years because it was just so corrosive. The train memorial is on the right as we go past these trees. Now we're going to resume our drive around the Graniteville Loop. On the right is the Masonic Shopping Center. On the left, along those train tracks, is where Chief Napier first encountered the two gentlemen from the train. On the left, at the railroad crossing, is the infamous Marshall Street. It goes down in a dip towards Horse Creek and then goes back up a hill towards Gregg Plant. Pay attention to the water tower on your left. You will see it again from the high ground. It'll give you a little orientation of where you're at. Coming up on the right was Lavelma Campbell Middle School at the time. And had this train wreck happened a few hours later in the morning, it would have been a complete and total disaster because of all the children headed to school here on Main Street. We're now turning left onto Oscaga Lake Road, which runs west. On the left, we will pass several loading docks. One of them is for the Gregg plant. I'm not sure exactly which one. I'm not familiar with the layout of the plant. I'm going to assume it's the one up the hill closest to the church. And we are approaching on the left what I'm assuming to be Gregg plant loading dock. The area to the left is full of little mill houses, and I'm going to turn left on Ergle Street. It's just a heavily populated residential area. Just ahead on the right was Byrd Elementary School, so you could see the close proximity of all the schools to the disaster site. We're now turning left on the infamous Marshall Street, headed roughly east. I'm not going to go all the way back down to Canal Street on this video, but we are going to take a right onto Lightner Street Extension, which is the direction Mr. Mike and Mr. Curtis went when they exited the Gregg plant parking lot. If you remember seeing the water tower as we came down Canal Street, this is that same water tower. We're just looking at it from the high ground, which gives you a good bird's eye view of the little bowl that Graniteville sits in. I can't imagine what these folks went through as they drove down Lightner Street Extension, because they're literally driving straight into the chlorine cloud where it's following Horse Creek, right there close to Woodhead Division. And here is Horse Creek, the low bottom in Graniteville, and it flows left to right here, and it went on down through the wooded area towards Langley Pond. That is Posner Street on the left, just past the bridge. That was one of the ways into the Stevens Steam Plant. And then on ahead, all of the buildings on the right is the Woodhead Division. And directly across from the Woodhead Division on the left, about a football field, maybe a little more, is the train wreck.